The North Atlantic, 1942. A vast, unforgiving expanse of grey, turbulent water. Below the surface, a silent war was being waged, claiming lives and tonnage at an alarming rate. Hitler's U-boats, the grey wolves, roamed unchecked, their targets the vital convoys ferrying supplies from North America to a besieged Britain. Every ship lost was a blow to the Allied war effort. Every seaman drowned a tragedy. The Royal Navy, stretched thin and battered, fought desperately to protect these lifelines, but their methods often seemed futile against the stealth and cunning of the German submarines. It was a time of immense pressure, fear, and a desperate search for any advantage. Aboard HMS Orchid, a Flower-class corvette designed for anti-submarine warfare, Lieutenant Commander James Whitmore felt the weight of this struggle keenly. He was a man forged in the crucible of naval tradition, his mind meticulously organized, his expectations grounded in established doctrine. Every day he saw the grim reality of the Atlantic War, the smoke plumes of torpedoed merchantmen, the oil slicks marking watery graves. His ship, like many others, was equipped with ASDIC, the rudimentary sonar of its day, which sent out acoustic pings to locate submerged U-boats. It was a vital tool, but it was far from perfect, often thwarted by thermal layers or the sheer vastness of the ocean. The U-boats, in turn, were equipped with sensitive hydrophones, capable of detecting the thrum of propeller shafts and engine noises from miles away, turning convoys into easy targets long before they were ever seen. Amidst the constant tension and the ever-present threat of attack, life in the galley of HMS Orchid continued its relentless rhythm. Here, away from the bridge and the nerve center of the ship, worked Chief Petty Officer Harold "Harry" Pemberton. Harry was an unlikely naval man, fair former sous chef from the hallowed kitchens of the Savoy Hotel in London. His hands, once accustomed to delicate garnishes and precise measurements for haute cuisine, now grappled with vast cauldrons of stew and mountains of mashed potatoes, serving hundreds of hungry sailors in the rolling seas. His fastidious nature, once a virtue in a five-star establishment, often led him to notice minute details others overlooked. One blustery afternoon, while cleaning the grease traps after a particularly fatty meal of roast mutton, Harry found himself observing the peculiar way the thick, viscous grease absorbed the clang and clatter of the galley. It was a minor, almost subconscious observation, yet it sparked a nascent, utterly outlandish idea. He noticed how the accumulated fat on the bulkhead seemed to muffle the sounds of the engines humming below, a phenomenon he had often dismissed as a mere nuisance in his previous life. But now, in the midst of a war fought on sound waves, it began to coalesce into a truly stupid thought. The North Atlantic was a graveyard, and the Royal Navy needed a miracle. Harry Pemberton, the Savoy chef, might just have stumbled upon it in the most unlikely of places, a greasy pan. His seemingly absurd notion, born from the mundane world of the ship's kitchen, was about to challenge everything Lieutenant Commander Whitmore and the Admiralty understood about anti-submarine warfare. It was a concept so bizarre, so unconventional, that it initially invited ridicule and outright dismissal. Yet, in the desperate crucible of total war, even the most absurd ideas deserved a second glance. The very sound of the ship, its mechanical heartbeat, was its greatest vulnerability. What if that heartbeat could be silenced, or at least muffled, by something as simple and unassuming as kitchen grease? It was a question that would soon reshape the Battle of the Atlantic. And remember, if you find this story as fascinating as we do, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on more untold historical narratives. This culinary insight, dismissed by many as lunacy, was poised to revolutionize anti-submarine warfare, turning the tide against the U-boat menace in a way no one could have predicted. The U-boat threat was stark and uncompromising in 1942. German submarines operating in coordinated wolf packs had sent over 2 million tons of Allied shipping to the bottom of the Atlantic, a staggering number that threatened to strangle Britain's lifeline. These wolf packs, often comprising a dozen or more U-boats, would lurk along known convoy routes, using reconnaissance to locate their prey. Once a convoy was sighted, a single U-boat would shadow it, sending radio signals to call in the rest of the pack. Then, under the cover of darkness, they would surface and launch their torpedoes, wreaking havoc before disappearing into the depths. The tactical brilliance of their commanders, combined with the superior stealth of the Type 7 U-boats, made them formidable adversaries. For the Allied navies, the challenge was immense. Their primary anti-submarine weapon was ASDIC, or as it became known, sonar. This technology involved emitting sound pulses and listening for their echoes to detect submerged objects. However, ASDIC had significant limitations. It was relatively short-ranged, usually only a few thousand yards, and often struggled in turbulent waters or when temperature gradients in the ocean created thermal layers that deflected sound waves. Furthermore, it could not detect submarines directly beneath the escort vessel, creating a blind spot. The U-boats, meanwhile, relied heavily on passive acoustic detection. Their sensitive hydrophones could pick up the distant thrumming of propellers and the rhythmic beat of ship engines, allowing them to track convoys from afar, often beyond ASDIC range, before making their move. This technological asymmetry created a deadly cat-and-mouse game, with the U-boats often having the upper hand in the initial detection phase. Kapitän-Leutnant Werner Hartmann, commander of U-552, was a master of this game. A decorated veteran with a string of sinkings to his name, Hartmann was known for his aggressive tactics and his uncanny ability to find and destroy Allied shipping. From his vantage point in the control room, surrounded by the subtle creaks and groans of his submarine, he listened intently to the reports from his hydrophone operators. He knew the sounds of every Allied ship class, the telltale signatures that marked them as prey. For Hartmann, the ocean was a vast soundscape, and he was its hunter. He understood the profound vulnerability of surface ships to acoustic detection, a weakness he exploited with ruthless efficiency. Harold Pemberton, on the other hand, had spent his life immersed in a different kind of soundscape. Before the war, the clatter of pots and pans, the sizzle of butter in a hot pan, and the hushed murmurs of an exclusive dining room were his familiar auditory world. His journey from the opulent kitchens of the Savoy to the cramped utilitarian galley of HMS Orchid was a testament to the indiscriminate nature of total war. Like countless other civilians, Pemberton had been called up for service. His culinary skills, while initially deemed irrelevant to the grim business of naval warfare, were considered essential for crew morale. A well-fed crew was a fighting crew, and Harry's ability to conjure surprisingly palatable meals from limited rations was a genuine asset. He hated the sea, the constant motion, the smell of diesel and stale sweat, a stark contrast to the refined aromas of his former life. Yet he performed his duties diligently, a quiet, observant man, often lost in his own thoughts, while peeling mountains of potatoes or stirring vats of soup. His presence on a destroyer, a man of such specific non-military expertise, highlighted the extraordinary circumstances of the time, where every able-bodied person was pressed into service, regardless of their pre-war profession. He was a chef, not a sailor, yet he found himself at the very heart of the Atlantic War, surrounded by the very machinery he was about to unwittingly challenge. The germ of the stupid idea began to fester in Harry Pemberton's mind. His initial observation about the sound-dampening properties of grease, made casually in the galley, refused to be dismissed. He started experimenting, albeit covertly, in his small, cluttered workspace. He would apply layers of various fats, leftover cooking oils, and even some thicker rendered animal fats to metal surfaces near the ship's engine room, tapping them with a spoon, comparing the dull thud against the sharp clang of untreated metal. The difference was subtle, yet undeniable to his keen ear. The sound was not eliminated, but significantly muffled, the vibrations noticeably reduced. Emboldened by these crude experiments, and driven by a quiet desperation to contribute more than just meals, Harry decided to approach Lieutenant Commander Whitmore. It was a nervous, almost comical encounter. Harry, in his grease-stained whites, standing awkwardly before the impeccably uniformed Whitmore, haltingly explained his theory. "Sir," he began, fidgeting with his apron, "I've noticed, that is to say, the grease in the galley. It makes things quieter, you see." He went on to describe how thick, viscous substances seem to absorb vibrations, suggesting that if the ship's hull, particularly around the propeller shafts and engine compartments, could be coated in such a material, it might reduce the acoustic signature. Whitmore's reaction was predictable. A moment of bewildered silence, followed by a barely suppressed snort of amusement. "Pemberton," he said, trying to maintain composure, "are you suggesting we smear our entire ship with cooking fat? Have you lost your mind, man?" Other officers present, overhearing the exchange, openly scoffed. The idea of a chef's kitchen observations having any relevance to sophisticated anti-submarine warfare was met with outright ridicule. It was an insult to their training, their technology, and the very gravity of the situation. However, beneath Whitmore's initial skepticism lay a profound desperation. Convoy HX-229, the next assignment, was already projected to face heavy U-boat activity. He had witnessed too many ships sunk, too many lives lost. The current methods were simply not enough. Despite the sheer absurdity of the proposition, the quiet conviction in Pemberton's eyes and the lack of any viable alternatives stirred something within him. He remembered the reports of U-boats detecting convoys from extreme ranges, their hydrophones acting like vast underwater ears. If even a marginal reduction in acoustic output could be achieved, it might buy valuable minutes or even save a ship. Whitmore called Pemberton to his cabin later that evening. "All right, Chief," he said, rubbing his temples. "Explain it again. In layman's terms, if you can." Harry, surprisingly articulate when discussing his area of expertise, described how sound waves are essentially vibrations. He explained that a denser, more viscous medium could absorb these vibrations, converting kinetic energy into heat, thus dissipating the sound rather than allowing it to travel through the water. He theorized that a specific blend of fats and perhaps some other common compounds found on a ship could create a material that would adhere to the hull and effectively dampen engine noise. Whitmore, still dubious but willing to grasp at any straw, gave Pemberton a limited window to test his theory on the HMS Orchid. He allocated a small section of the ship's stern near the propellers for the experiment. Harry, now energized, began to concoct his paste. He requisitioned all available rendered animal fats, gallons of cooking oil, even some of the ship's lubrication grease. He worked tirelessly in his galley, mixing, heating, and experimenting. His laboratory now smelling faintly of stale fat and diesel. The task of preparation was daunting, requiring not only the creation of the compound, but also a method to apply it to the ship's hull while at sea, or at least in a relatively calm port. This was no easy feat, but for Whitmore, the prospect of even a slim chance of success was worth the risk and the quiet grumbling of his crew. The opportunity for the first real test came with Convoy HX-229, a sprawling collection of 80 merchant vessels and 10 escorts departing from New York in March 1943. The convoy was known to be a prime target for German wolf packs. Prior to departure, a makeshift team, led by a surprisingly enthusiastic Harry Pemberton, began the arduous task of applying what the crew had sarcastically dubbed Pemberton's paste. Under the cover of darkness and a driving rain, as the HMS Orchid was tied up at Halifax, sailors lowered themselves over the stern in bosun's chairs, meticulously slathering the thick, pungent mixture onto the hull around the propeller shafts and engine room exhaust ports. The paste, a curious concoction of rendered lard, whale oil, and some of the ship's heavier greases, had been fortified by Harry with a touch of engine soot and even finely ground coal dust, believing these particulate additions would further enhance its sound-absorbing properties. It was a messy, unpleasant job, but the grim determination of the crew, instilled by Whitmore's quiet authority, ensured it was completed. As the convoy ploughed eastward into the unforgiving Atlantic, the usual tension was palpable. Weeks into the journey, the expected U-boat contact came. Captain Lieutenant Werner Hartmann, commanding U-552, had positioned his Wolfpack perfectly. His hydrophone operators were reporting the characteristic thrum of a large convoy, but something was amiss. The acoustic signatures were unusually faint, almost ghostly. "They're there," his operator reported, "but the noise, it's barely perceptible, as if they're further away than they should be or moving incredibly slowly." Hartmann, a veteran of countless engagements, frowned. He knew the sounds of these ships. His instruments were calibrated, his men experienced. Yet the hydrophones painted a picture of a convoy that was acoustically muted, a mere whisper on the vast soundscape of the ocean. He ordered his U-boat to move closer, an unusual maneuver given his normal caution, but he needed clearer readings. As U-552 crept towards the convoy's estimated position, its hydrophones still struggled to get a precise fix. The convoy seemed to appear and disappear on the acoustic horizon, a phantom menace. Aboard HMS Orchid, the crew held their breath. A U-boat had been detected by ASDIC, but its initial approach had been unusually hesitant, its movements less confident than typical. The escort group, guided by the few clear ASDIC pings they did receive, was able to launch a successful depth charge attack, forcing the U-boat to withdraw, damaged. The contact was brief, but it marked a critical shift. After several days of U-boat probes, the convoy sailed through a known kill zone with only minor losses, far fewer than predicted. Initial reports from other escorts in the group noted similar difficulties for U-boats, suggesting a widespread anomaly. Later analysis of the HMS Orchid's acoustic signature, performed by a small research team Whitmore had secretly invited aboard, confirmed Harry's incredible claim. Using specialized hydrophones, they measured a substantial reduction in the ship's radiated acoustic noise, a staggering 60% decrease in low-frequency engine and propeller sounds. The paste, dubbed Pemberton's dampener by the scientists, was undeniably effective. The initial skepticism among the crew of HMS Orchid began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism. A chief petty officer, a cook by trade, had seemingly stumbled upon a secret weapon. Whitmore, who had initially dismissed the idea as the ramblings of a madman, now looked at Harry Pemberton with a new, profound respect. The impossible had happened. The ghost convoy was real. News of the success, albeit cautiously presented, began to filter up through the Royal Navy command structure. Whitmore's report on convoy HX-229, detailing the unusual acoustic difficulties faced by U-boats and the subsequent analysis of HMS Orchid's reduced signature, landed on the desks of Admiralty officials. Initially, the reports were met with a mixture of disbelief and outright derision. The idea that a concoction of kitchen grease and engine soot could confound advanced German submarine technology was simply too outlandish for the traditional naval establishment. Many senior admirals, steeped in the rigorous engineering and scientific principles of naval warfare, viewed it as a crude, unscientific anomaly, perhaps a lucky coincidence or even a fabrication. Smearing ships with lard? Preposterous, was a common sentiment. The notion challenged their very understanding of naval engineering and acoustics, and it was hard for them to accept that a solution to one of the war's most pressing problems could come from such an unconventional source. However, the sheer desperation of the situation, coupled with Whitmore's reputation for professionalism and meticulous reporting, prevented the idea from being dismissed entirely. A small, forward-thinking faction within the Admiralty, including a handful of naval scientists at the underwater sound detection establishment, pushed for a rigorous scientific validation. They were acutely aware of the crippling losses and were willing to explore any avenue, no matter how unconventional. Harry Pemberton was quietly brought to a naval research facility in Scotland, where his paste was subjected to intense scrutiny. Under laboratory conditions, engineers meticulously recreated his concoction and applied it to scale models, and then to full-sized sections of hull plating. To their astonishment, the results mirrored Whitmore's findings. The blend of fats and particulate matter did indeed absorb and dissipate low-frequency sound waves, effectively making the coated surface a less efficient sound emitter. The scientific principle, while initially unexpected in this context, was sound. The viscous, heterogeneous mixture created multiple interfaces and internal friction, converting vibrational energy into minute amounts of heat, thus dampening the sound before it could propagate efficiently into the water. Pemberton's dampener, as it was officially designated, was real. The challenge then shifted from validation to production. Scaling up a concoction of kitchen scraps and industrial waste to cover hundreds of ships was a logistical nightmare. The Royal Navy, however, was nothing if not resourceful. Factories across Britain, usually engaged in processing animal products for food or industrial lubricants, were repurposed. Massive vats were set up, blending rendered animal fats, various vegetable oils, and even specific types of industrial grease with carefully measured quantities of carbon-based powders, such as finely ground coal or even lampblack. The formula was refined, made more durable, and easier to apply in varying sea conditions. It became known colloquially as Pemberton's paste, a testament to its humble origins. By late 1943, the Admiralty began issuing orders for all convoy escort vessels to be coated with the compound, particularly around their engine rooms, propeller shafts and sterns. Special teams were trained in its application, a process that had to be repeated periodically due to the constant erosion of seawater. A quiet revolution was underway, a testament to the ingenuity born from desperate necessity and the unexpected wisdom of a chef. The impact of Pemberton's paste, once fully implemented, was nothing short of miraculous. By early 1944, every Allied convoy escort transiting the Atlantic was coated with the thick, dark grey substance. The effect on U-boat operations was immediate and profound. Statistics, which had shown a grim upward trend in Allied shipping losses, began to plateau and then dramatically plummet. In the first half of 1943, the Allies lost an average of 120 ships per month. By the first half of 1944, that number had fallen to less than 30, a direct reversal of fortunes that significantly hampered Germany's ability to wage economic warfare. U-boat commanders across the Atlantic began filing increasingly frustrated reports. Their hydrophones, once their most reliable tool for long-range detection, were failing them. Convoys that should have been easily located were now elusive, appearing only at closer ranges, if at all. The characteristic thrumming that marked a group of merchant ships and their escorts had been significantly muted, replaced by a faint, indistinct whisper. Kapitän-Leutnant Werner Hartmann, still commanding U-552, was among the most vocal in his bewilderment. His meticulously kept logbooks, once filled with detailed observations of acoustic signatures, now contained entries expressing growing frustration. "Contact lost at unexpected range," he scribbled. "Acoustic profile inconsistent with known ship types. Phantom sounds." He ordered his U-boat to take greater risks, venturing closer to suspected convoy routes, often to find nothing. The psychological toll on the U-boat crews was immense. They had been the undisputed masters of the deep, their stealth and superior detection methods granting them a terrifying advantage. Now, their primary hunting tool was failing, and the ocean, once a canvas of predictable sounds, had become a realm of deceptive silence. The hunters were becoming disoriented, their confidence eroding. Conversely, aboard the Allied escorts, the mood shifted from grim determination to cautious triumph. The success rate of depth charge attacks improved as U-boats, forced to approach closer and for longer durations to gain a proper acoustic fix, were more easily detected by ASDIC at short range. The cat-and-mouse game was still perilous, but the Allies now had a significant advantage. The silence, or rather the muted presence of their own ships, gave them a crucial element of surprise. The German Navy's intelligence arm launched a frantic investigation. Aerial reconnaissance photographs of Allied ships were scrutinized for any unusual modifications. Captured sailors were interrogated relentlessly, but the secret of Pemberton's paste remained secure. It was a low-tech, seemingly crude solution, yet its impact on the high-stakes technological battle was devastating. The psychological impact resonated on both sides of the conflict. For the Allies, it was a renewed sense of hope and capability, a feeling that they could finally turn the tide. For the Germans, it was a gnawing sense of confusion and dread, a silent, invisible countermeasure that defied explanation and slowly but surely began to break their will to hunt. The German intelligence services, baffled by the sudden and dramatic decline in U-boat success rates, initiated a top-priority investigation into the Allied countermeasure. Naval analysts studied reconnaissance photos, looking for any physical alterations to convoy ships, while radio intercepts were scoured for clues. Attempts were made to recruit agents within British shipyards, specifically tasked with uncovering the nature of the silent ship phenomenon. However, the secret of Pemberton's paste was exceptionally well guarded. The British counterintelligence effort was intense and multi-layered. Information about the paste was compartmentalized, with only a select few at the Admiralty, and the research facilities knowing its true composition and origin. Production facilities were shrouded in secrecy, and the process of application to ships was often carried out under strict security, sometimes even disguised as routine hull maintenance. Sailors involved in the application were sworn to secrecy, and any captured personnel who might have knowledge of it were considered high-value targets for extraction or, failing that, immediate debriefing upon return. The unassuming nature of the weapon also contributed to its security. It seemed too crude, too simple for enemy intelligence to readily believe or prioritize, even if fragmented reports had somehow surfaced. For Harry Pemberton, life had changed considerably, though he remained characteristically humble. His quiet ingenuity had not gone unnoticed. Lieutenant Commander Whitmore, who had initially championed his cause, ensured that his contribution was recognized. Harry, the former chef, was promoted to lieutenant, a remarkable achievement for someone with his background and non-commissioned origins, and formally assigned to the Admiralty's Anti-Submarine Warfare Division as a technical consultant. He found himself in rooms with admirals and scientists, his practical knowledge proving invaluable in refining the paste's formula and application methods. The initial blend, while effective, was difficult to apply and maintain. Through ongoing research, guided by Pemberton's unique insights into material properties and texture, the formula was improved. New polymers and binding agents were introduced to make it more durable in seawater, extending its effective life between applications. Different thicknesses and application zones were tested to optimize its sound-dampening capabilities against varying engine types and hull designs. This period, from late 1943 through 1944, became the definitive turning point in the Battle of the Atlantic. The combination of improved air cover, advanced radar, and the ubiquitous Pemberton's paste fundamentally shifted the balance of power. The U-boats were no longer the unseen, unheard hunters. They were now frequently surprised, targeted, and sunk. Their ability to conduct coordinated wolfpack attacks was severely hampered by their inability to reliably track convoys. The strategic impact was immense. Britain's supply lines were secured, allowing the build-up of troops and material essential for the eventual D-Day landings. The U-boat threat, once an existential peril, was effectively neutralized not by a single revolutionary weapon, but by a combination of evolving tactics and, critically, an unconventional innovation born in a ship's galley. Pemberton, the unassuming chef, became a quiet hero. His stupid idea saving countless lives and playing a pivotal, if largely unsung, role in winning the longest campaign of World War II. As the war drew to a close in 1945, the full impact of Pemberton's paste on the Battle of the Atlantic became evident. Post-war analyses meticulously documented the dramatic shift in convoy losses. From 1942 to mid-1943, Allied shipping losses averaged over 100 ships per month. After the widespread implementation of the acoustic dampening compound, this figure plummeted to fewer than 20 ships per month by late 1944. It is estimated that Pemberton's innovation, combined with other anti-submarine advancements, directly contributed to saving hundreds of thousands of tons of shipping, and more importantly, tens of thousands of Allied lives. The simple act of silencing the ships, making them acoustically invisible, had removed one of the U-boat's most potent advantages. The irony of the situation was perhaps best captured in a post-war encounter. Kapitän-Leutnant Werner Hartmann, eventually captured during the final months of the war, found himself interned in a British prisoner-of-war camp. During his interrogation, British intelligence officers, seeking to understand the psychological impact of the silent convoys, cautiously revealed the true nature of the countermeasure. They presented him with a sample of the paste and explained its origins, carefully detailing how a chef's observation had led to its development. Hartmann, a man of profound pride and intellectual rigor, initially dismissed it as a crude propaganda ploy. He believed it had to be some advanced German technology, perhaps captured and repurposed, but as the details unfolded, corroborated by technical specifications he himself could analyze, a look of profound disbelief, then grudging respect, settled on his face. The idea that his sophisticated acoustic tracking systems, developed by top German engineers, had been nullified by a viscous compound derived from kitchen fats, was almost too much to comprehend. He admitted that the sudden loss of acoustic contact had driven him and his crews to near madness, forcing them to take desperate risks that often led to their destruction. The chef's kitchen knowledge had indeed defeated the pinnacle of naval technology. After the war, Harold Pemberton, now a decorated lieutenant, quietly returned to civilian life. He politely declined offers of fame or a lucrative career in naval research, preferring the familiar comforts of his original profession. He returned to the Savoy not as a sous chef, but as head chef, his wartime experiences adding a quiet depth to his character. He rarely spoke of his contribution to the war effort, viewing it simply as his duty, a problem he had solved with the tools at hand. His legacy, however, quietly endured. The principles of acoustic dampening, first stumbled upon in a ship's galley, laid foundational groundwork for future stealth technologies in naval vessels, though the exact composition of the paste itself evolved dramatically over time. Pemberton lived a long and distinguished career in the culinary world, his only unusual habit perhaps a meticulous attention to the properties of various fats and oils, a subtle nod to the secret that had saved countless lives. He remained a testament to the idea that genius can arise from the most unexpected places. A quiet hero who fought and won a battle not with guns and torpedoes, but with a profoundly stupid idea. The final statistics of the Battle of the Atlantic speak volumes about the transformative power of unconventional thinking. By the end of the war, over 3 Schweizer and Allied merchant ships and 175 warships were sunk, but the U-boat force itself suffered catastrophic losses, with nearly 800 submarines destroyed and 37 of their 40 Southern crewmen killed. The introduction of Pemberton's paste contributed significantly to the shift in these numbers, turning the hunter into the hunted by stripping them of their primary advantage. It stands as a powerful testament to the idea that solutions to the most complex and intractable problems can often come from unexpected sources and through seemingly absurd observations. The conventional wisdom, steeped in tradition and established scientific principles, often overlooks the simple, the mundane, the stupid idea. Harry Pemberton, the Savoy chef, embodied this broader lesson. His expertise, seemingly irrelevant to naval warfare, provided a perspective that no career naval officer or military scientist could have conceived. It highlights the immense value of diverse knowledge and the critical role that interdisciplinary thinking plays, especially in times of crisis. His contribution marked a significant milestone in the history of naval acoustic warfare. While the specific paste itself was eventually superseded by more advanced materials and technologies, the fundamental principle of actively manipulating a ship's acoustic signature for stealth remained a cornerstone of naval design. Modern stealth ships and submarines owe a quiet debt to that messy, greasy concoction, developed in a cramped galley in the darkest days of the Atlantic War. It proved that sometimes the most sophisticated challenges can be overcome not by bigger bombs or faster ships, but by a simple, brilliant idea born from the most humble of observations. If you enjoyed this deep dive into an often overlooked moment in history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you.